Halloween is a time for remembering the dead, dressing up in embarrassing costumes, and gorging yourself in candy without feeling guilty. But for some, Halloween has been a much more sinister holiday that has resulted in tragedy, so join us as we count 10 horrific real Halloween murders.
Number 10.
Martha Moxley. The scene was Greenwich, Connecticut. The night before Halloween, Martha Moxley left to attend a neighborhood party. It was the last time she was ever seen alive. Her body was found on Halloween morning, brutally battered to death beneath a tree in her backyard. The murder weapon, a shattered golf club, lay nearby. This hideous crime went unsolved for almost 25 years, when Michael Skakel was finally charged and convicted of her murder. Skakel's alibi that he had been masturbating under that tree earlier the same night but had no connection to the crime turned out to be flimsy, and several witnesses claimed that he had confessed to the crime while in a drug rehab.
Number 9.
Leslie Mazzara and Adriane Insogna. After a quiet Halloween night spent handing out candy to California trick-or-treaters, roommates Leslie Mazzara, Adriane Insogna, and Lauren Mianza all headed to bed. Mianza was woken up by sounds of a scuffle upstairs at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and she ran in terror from the house, hiding in the backyard and watching an unidentified assailant climb out of a window. She ran upstairs to check on her roommates, to find them both viciously stabbed to death. It took nearly a year to find the killer, but cigarette butts found at the scene eventually fingered a man named Eric Koppel, the fiancé of one of Insogna's friends. He believed that their friendship was threatening the upcoming wedding, and just lost it in paranoid violence.
Number 8.
Tony Bagley. 7-year-old Las Vegas boy Tony Bagley was all ready to go trick-or-treating on Halloween night in 1994. Sadly, he never had the chance. Tony, his sister, aunt, and mother were walking down the street in the Northtown area when a man in a sweatsuit with a hood over his head ran into the street with a gun and opened fire on the family, killing Tony and wounding his family before jumping into a waiting car and speeding away. Speculation was that it was revenge for a drug deal gone wrong. Just a few years later, Tony's father was found guilty of a different murder, but the killer has never been caught.
Number 7.
Liske family murder. After returning to his Ohio home after attending church, Griffin found the corpses of his brother Derek, mother Susan, and her new husband William Liske. All 3 victims have received blunt force trauma to the head, and Devon was so traumatized he could only say it was like something out of a haunted house. The perpetrator was Liske's son from a previous marriage, William Liske Jr. With a history of schizophrenia and violence, Liske was picked up at the halfway house he lived in Sandusky and pleaded guilty to all 3 murders without ever providing a motive as for why he did it.
Number 6.
Karl Jackson. Karl Jackson, who had just turned 21, was a quiet, friendly data entry worker at Morgan Stanley who kept to himself a lot. On Halloween night, he went with his girlfriend to pick up her 9-year-old son from a party. While there, some teenagers threw eggs at their car. Jackson got out, exchanged words with the throwers, and stepped back in the car. Then, one of the teens pulled a gun and shot him through the head, killing him instantly. The perpetrators were never caught.
Number 5.
Taylor Van Diest. Small towns can be breeding grounds for Halloween violence as well. On Halloween night in 2011, a young woman named Taylor Van Diest was heading home from a party in the small town of Armstrong in the northern Okanagan territory of Canada. She never made it. Taylor was found brutally beaten into unconsciousness, and she wasn't able to identify her attacker before dying of her injuries. Her death traumatized a town of just over 5,000 people, especially after it was revealed that she'd sent a text to her boyfriend before the attack saying she was being creeped on. Police eventually used DNA evidence to arrest both Matthew Forrester for the crime and his father Stephen for helping him to cover up the crime.
Number 4.
Pasadena Murders. One of the most shocking Halloween crimes of all time happened in Pasadena, California. On Halloween night in 1993, decades of gang violence culminated in a horrific shooting where a group of 5 Bloods opened fire on trick-or-treating teenagers, killing 3 of them and wounding 3 others. The group of victims were walking home from a Halloween party when the assailants jumped out of bushes they had been hiding in and opened fire randomly, spraying them with bullets. After arrests were made, the police reasoned that the shootings were revenge for a killing earlier that night, but the Bloods had the wrong kids, murdering innocent people.
Number 3.
Peter Fabiano. When you hear that knock on your door on Halloween night, you're expecting no more than a small child in a cute costume pestering you for some delicious candy. Sadly, for Peter Fabiano, Halloween didn't end this way. On Halloween night, Fabiano opened the door to reveal a grown-up in a full disguise, who shot him in the chest with a .22 in a brown paper bag before fleeing the scene. The murderer was actually a woman named Goldine Pizer. Pizer was friends with a woman named Joanne Rabel, who had a lesbian crush on Fabiano's wife Betty. Pizer and Rabel hatched a plan to get the man of the house out of the way, but cops managed to track them down and got them jailed for second-degree murder.
Number 2.
Timothy O'Brien poisoning. One of the most enduring Halloween urban legends is the story of candy or other treats tampered with in some way, whether it be spider eggs in bubblegum or razor blades in apples. Most of these stories are malarkey, but there have been real incidents. One of the most famous came in 1974 in Deer Park, Texas. After trick-or-treating, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien chose a pixie sticks to cap off his evening. After eating it, he began convulsing and died after being rushed to the hospital. Terrifyingly, the perpetrator was his own father, Ronald O'Brien. Deep into debt, O'Brien was hoping to cash in on the life insurance from his kids by poisoning their candy with cyanide. Instead, he wound up dying by lethal injection just a few years later.
Number 1.
Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman. Sometime during the early morning Halloween hours of 1981, a Manhattan couple named Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman were murdered in their apartment, which was located near Greenwich Village. The couple was severely beaten before being shot in the head, execution style, and the apartment was completely ransacked. Sisman was rumored to be involved in drugs, so authorities initially believed that to be the motive for the killings. However, the case took a bizarre turn when a prison informant claimed that one of his fellow inmates had somehow predicted the crime weeks before it actually happened. That inmate turned out to be none other than the notorious Son of Sam killer, David Berkowitz. In 1977, Berkowitz was convicted of a series of shootings, which took the lives of 6 victims and left 7 others wounded. There has always been speculation that Berkowitz was involved with a satanic cult, and did not commit all these Son of Sam murders on his own. According to the informant, Berkowitz had told him that the cult was planning to enter a residence near Greenwich Village on Halloween. They would perform a ritual murder by shooting a couple in the head before ransacking the place to remove incriminating evidence. When questioned about this, Berkowitz claimed that Sisman possessed snuffed footage of one of the Son of Sam shootings and was planning to hand it over to the authorities to avoid some drug charges. While no evidence was found to support Berkowitz's claims, he did provide an eerily accurate description of Sisman's apartment. No one knows if the murders of Sisman and Platzman had anything to do with the Son of Sam case, but they are still unsolved.